So let's talk about meal timing. So in the IGM program, so this is disclosure moving forward, we really focus a lot on fasting. I would say that over 50% of mine and Dr. Fung's patient population still eats a fairly high carbohydrate diet. They just try to be better about it. Our long distance patients, mind you, are a lot more concerned about the carbohydrates, some a lot more than others. So in the program, we really emphasize a lot on fasting. I can't tell you the number of patients this week that told Dr. Fung and I that they just weren't going to change their diets. They had tried to reduce the carbohydrates and that it wasn't going to happen and that they were just going to continue to eat what their families ate. And Dr. Fung has two small kids, two boys, and he totally gets it. I mean, his kids definitely eat a lot better now than they used to, now that he's knowledgeable about this stuff, of course. We get it, and we do get it. But there's a lot of you out there who really want to learn a lot more about the diet. And some of you want to take it to a lot greater extreme than others. Myself, I follow a very strict ketogenic diet. Nadia, who some of you might work with also, she does sort of a cyclic ketogenic diet. Friday nights, she eats what she wants, and she goes out to dinner with her family, but the rest of the time, her and her family, including her kids, are fairly ketogenic. Her kids, I mean, they'll go to parties and eat what they want, and occasionally they have things. But on Fridays, she eats one meal of carbohydrates. We call that a cyclic ketogenic diet, when you take one meal or one day of the week and you eat more carbohydrates. I'm fairly strict on the ketogenic diet myself. I measure my ketones, and I'm very adamant about it. And then Dr. Fung is more moderate low carb, because he just finds being a dad, and with all of the social dinners that he has, even when he makes these good options, there's a lot of sugar. Pork's brine in sugar, chicken's brine in sugar. He finds it really hard to stay in a ketogenic state all of the time. So we focus a lot on fasting, and please don't leave today's session feeling like you have no idea what to eat. You let me know, you let Nadia know what you want to do in terms of the diet. And we are going to help guide you there. Now, right now, we're going to talk about meal timing. After meal timing, we'll run through the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of foods. And it's up to you to take that to the next level of being extreme, if you want to be extreme. And it's up to you whether or not you want to follow it at all. If you're not going to follow the guidelines, that's okay. We really have to work on fasting then. More fasting. But if you are going to follow the guidelines, that's great too. And if you want to even be more extreme in a ketogenic sense, that's absolutely okay also. But let us know. We work with that on an individual basis. Even for our patients that want to become ketogenic, we actually choose to focus on the fasting with them first and then work on the diet secondary. We have found that to be very successful over the last 4 years. We find patients who try to really focus so much on the fasting and the diet all at once to be too overwhelming and lead to failure. And when we try to focus on the diet first prior to the fasting, with the exception of the fat fasting for a few days, patients were still being tempted by the carbohydrates. They were never getting their hormones very regulated, so they weren't even getting into a position where they were fasting. So we always start, even if you're to come to me and say, Megan, I want to be perfectly ketogenic and I want to fast. It's easier to focus on fasting first and work on changing the diet slowly. The fasting will help aid you in becoming ketogenic, and the ketogenic will help aid you into doing better fasting. But we found that the best strategy is to tackle the fasting first. So please, please, please don't leave today feeling like you don't know what to eat. We're going to talk all about it. Our follow-up appointments are all super interactive. We are going to make sure that you are absolutely 100% on track with where you want to be in terms of the carbohydrate restriction that you would like to do. We'll make sure that if you want to count your macros, you know what to be looking for, how much macros are best for you. So what macros would be best for Megan versus Megan's husband. everybody is going to be different. So there's no straightforward guidelines per individual also. So that's another reason why we work on with it a little bit more one-on-one. So you're totally going to get all the diet training that you would like. And if you don't want diet training, we'll totally do all of the fasting training that you would like. So there's no real pressure here, but we are going to get there. But we really want to try to tackle the fasting first. And that's why this is such a primary focus of the program. So meal timing. So I'm going to talk about meal timing quickly, but when you eat matters just as much as what you eat. And I think we've already sort of killed this to death in the first part of the talk. But you want to make sure that your fuel tank, your internal fuel tank, your fuel lines, your blood, is pretty depleted before you go in and you toss in another meal in there. You really want to make sure that you're depleted as much as possible before you fill up again. Like you wouldn't go to the gas station when you had a 16th of a tank, like when you were only down a 16th of a tank of gas. You wouldn't go to the gas station then. That would be silly. That would be a waste of good time to go to the gas station. But maybe when you were down half a tank or 3/4 of a tank, or you had a 16th of a tank only left, then that's when you would go to the gas station. You wouldn't go when you had barely driven. You wouldn't go to the gas station when you had only driven 2 kilometers or you only driven 1.5 miles. You just wouldn't go. That wouldn't make sense. It'd be a total waste of your time. And then you'd end up spilling gas. It would just be a disaster. So I really want you to be mindful of when you're eating. We ask patients skip breakfast because diabetics will tell you their blood sugar levels are highest in the morning time, and they're also perplexed by this. But this is a result of something called the dawn effect. As a species, we were not designed to eat breakfast. Think of the caveman days. I mean, they didn't have a place to store food or preserve food at nighttime for the next day. They didn't have refrigerators like we do to keep food fresh and safe for consumption. And also think back to the caveman days. They didn't want to become prey. So when we go camping, we don't leave all of our steaks and bacon laying outside around our tent. We put it away in a lot cooler. But we never sleep next to a big ribeye because that way we're going to become chow for a grizzly bear, right? And we don't want to become grizzly bear chow. So cavemen, they literally, for safety reasons, both health for consuming food that might not be good anymore, and survival safety reasons by not making themselves prey, by having all of this food lying around their campsite for other animals. So we were not designed to eat in the morning. So your body rations off some of the sugar, glucose from those meals that you've had throughout the day or previous meals, and it stores them in the liver. You always have some sugar stored in the liver. And your body releases it about 2 hours before you wake up in the morning. And that is designed to fuel you. So it's something called the dawn effect or the dawn phenomenon. Our bodies are designed to provide us with fuel in the morning so we can get up out of bed and go about our daily activities without having to eat. And diabetics will know this because their blood sugar levels usually are very high in the mornings, more so than later on throughout the day if they're eating normally throughout the day and not taking a lot of bedtime insulin or diamicron at nighttime. Their morning sugars are the highest because of this fact. So we don't want to eat in the morning because if our blood sugar levels go up in the morning because our liver is dumping out sugar, that means that our body is secreting insulin to help drive that sugar into the cells to be used as energy. But if that mechanism is broken, it's just going to end up sitting in your blood and the insulin is going to convert it to fat, the sugar to fat. So we don't want that to happen. We really want to lower your blood sugar levels down before you eat. So a few comments on meal timing before we jump into the foods, guys. I know people work shifts too, so make sure that you're up and you're active for at least 3 hours before you have your first meal of the day, regardless of your shift. Also, make sure you finish eating a good 3 hours or more before you go to bed. So if I go to bed at 11 p.m., I really want to do my best to finish eating before 8 p.m. If I wake up at 6 p.m., I really, really, really want to make sure I'm not eating until the very latest after 9 a.m. So we really want to make sure we have this 3-hour windows, 3 hours after we wake up and 3 hours before bed. And the longer you can extend the windows, even the better. Like if you wake up at 6 and don't eat until 1, that's even better, just having the lunch and dinner. If you're someone who can, finish your dinner, have an earlier dinner, like 4 or 5 o'clock, and you're not going to bed at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, that's even better. The longer that window is even better. But you really want to make sure that you do your best for every 3 hours. I default fast on Tuesdays because I don't get home from work till 7:30, quarter to 8, and I have to be at work for about 6:30 the next morning, which means I have to just shower and sleep. And on Tuesdays, I will never email you guys back on a Tuesday. Tuesday, I'm in clinic from 8 a.m. until about 7 p.m. And it is a very long day, the afternoon in particular, because we have inpatients in the afternoon, and it is a very long, non-stop day. So you'll hear from me on Wednesdays. So the Tuesdays are crazy. So if I were to eat, I'd be going to bed right away because I could be up at 4:30 the next morning. So it's just not worthwhile for me to eat. So I just have Tuesday evening, just because it's just not safe for me to eat that late going towards bedtime. You really want to make sure your body has a chance to rest when you're sleeping and that it's not digesting food. I know nighttime snacking is a big thing. I used to fill up on like 20 cups of air pop popcorn every night, historically for like a good 25 years of my life, since I was a child, and a very young child at that. We'd always eat popcorn and watch TV as a kid at night, and I historically would always fill up on popcorn. If I was hungry, I'd eat popcorn. So I know all about that, and it's just best to go cold turkey on the nighttime snacking. And you're going to have a couple unpleasant weeks. You really are. You might lay there, toss and turn, and feel like you can't sleep unless you're eating something. But you absolutely can. It just takes a couple of weeks. So if you have a couple of weeks that are a little bit miserable, but you have a lifetime afterwards, decades, where you're going to be in good health and you're going to be able to travel when you retire and see the world and play with your grandkids and run around and not have the joint pain and not worry about disease and illness, I think that's worth a couple of weeks of toughing it out and being a little bit miserable at nighttime, and maybe not getting the best sleep. Taking magnesium citrate before you go to bed. The one I use is Natural Calm. I'm not sponsored by the company, no affiliation to the company. I just spent a bunch of money on this stuff myself. But I take Natural Calm, the unflavored one, because it has no sweeteners in it. I take that before bed, about 2 hours before bed. It helps calm you and relax you. So if you're a nighttime snacker, try the magnesium. It's magnesium citrate. I take 400 milligrams again, about 2 hours before bed. It has a calming, relaxing effect. And also peppermint tea. Peppermint tea is something great. Is that peppermint historically in Japanese culture for hundreds of years, peppermint has been used as a great appetite suppressant, and it has 0 caffeine in it. So it's just freaking awesome at helping to reduce your appetite. So that's great at nighttime. So the magnesium and the peppermint tea are 2 crutches that you can use at nighttime to help get you through, get through the evening. But it's just a couple of weeks. So that's very important. Now we'd like you to do your best to skip what is traditionally known as breakfast and eating right away when you first wake up, so you can burn down those morning blood sugar levels ASAP. So we really want to burn down those morning blood sugar levels as soon as possible. And we definitely don't want to add on more sugar. If your blood sugars are already really high, why do you want to eat and make them even higher? It doesn't make too much sense. So it's best to just fast. So even on an eating day, I'll have water, I'll have tea, I'll have broth. I often have broth on the eating days in the morning time just to help me get me going through the day. On weekends we'll have more of a brunch, but we do an exercise before we eat, do some errands before we eat. So we're active for a good, good 4 hours before we'll have brunch on a weekend. So keeping active, keeping busy, bringing down those blood sugars, and then eating again, and that will really help, prevent you from overloading your body with insulin. Breakfast literally means to break your fast. So whenever you break your fast is actually when you have breakfast. The word literally is broken into break fast, and in Latin it means when you break your fast. So if you eat at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that's when you have your breakfast if you're breaking your fast. So it's funny terminology that us fasting goofballs like to have. Now, on your eating days, when you do have lunch and you do have dinner, try to eat in these 2 90-minute eating windows. So take a 90-minute eating window around the middle of the day, and take a 90-minute eating window in the evening time, and eat within that window. So you can have your lunch. And then if you wanted a few almonds, if you wanted a tablespoon of peanut butter, if you wanted a couple of berries, that's fine, but it's within your eating window. The other day I had dinner. A few days ago, I ate dinner within half an hour. And then I was craving some peanut butter. So I had a tablespoon of peanut butter. And then I got busy checking my email. And then all of a sudden I was like, my husband was eating a square of dark chocolate. And I thought, okay, I wouldn't mind a square of dark chocolate. But then I looked up at the clock and I saw my eating window had ended. So my eating window had ended. So there is no more chocolate to the next eating window if I wanted it then. So allow yourself these 2 90-minute eating windows. So don't really call them meal time, but call them eating windows. So you can have your meal within that time, but you can eat other things if you would like a piece of dark chocolate. So dark chocolate is permitted, guys. I used to think it was gross. I used to think 70% chocolate was gross because it was so bitter. Now I can only eat 90. I can only eat 90% dark chocolate. It's the strangest thing. The other week I had a piece of my husband's 85, and it was gross to me not because it was bitter, but because it was too sweet. And this still makes me laugh to this day that I can find 85% chocolate to be too sweet and not want to have it. So your taste buds definitely adapt. I used to have to choke down 70% chocolate because I thought it was so bitter. And now I can't even imagine tasting it. Like, it would be a degree that it would almost repulse me. So your taste buds adapt to it. And I worked from 70 to 85. I started at 85 for a while. I worked my way up to 90. And now I like 90% dark chocolate. And the great thing about 90% dark chocolate is that it's so high in fiber and it's so high in fat and it's so high in magnesium. So it's just a really great thing. Yeah, my family celebrates Christmas, but we have all kinds of holiday parties going on in December. And when we go to a holiday party, I would bring a couple squares of dark chocolate with me. That way, if I really got tempted by watching everybody have the cakes and the pastries and the cookies, I had a little bit of dark chocolate in my purse just to help prevent me from grazing over and walking over to the pastry table and grazing on the pastries there. So dark chocolate is permitted. The darker, the better. There are a lot of people out there in the keto world. I see them on these Facebook groups, and they're eating 99% chocolate. Good for you. I can't do that yet. I have a bar of it sitting in my refrigerator, and I stare at it every now and then. But I've yet to try it. A friend bought it for me. So right now I'm on the 90%. But the dark chocolate it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So let's stick to the 2 90-minute eating windows. And so if you do want some nuts or some berries, things that don't make sense with your meal. Dr. Fung and I used to call it mealtime, but then people would end up grazing in between lunch and dinner. And we would say, why are you grazing? And they say, well, we wanted almonds, and almonds didn't go with our lunch. So they ended up grazing. So now we just refer to them as eating windows. So if you want almonds, if you want that tablespoon of peanut butter, if you want a couple of pine nuts, if you want a few berries, if you want a quarter of an apple, if you wanted some creme fraiche, or if you wanted some whipped cream, like all these good fats that we're going to talk about, well, have them in your eating windows, but try to restrict yourself to these eating windows. And hopefully over time you can narrow the eating windows. I do my best to stick to 2 60-minute eating windows a day. Sometimes the evening, though, does become 90 minutes. If it's later in the evening time, though, I will cap it to 60 if I know that I'm going to be going to bed. There are going to be times when these eating windows go out the window. As not to sound complicated, but there's going to be times where it just doesn't matter. You're going to be at a wedding, and the wedding, I'm Italian, so all we do is eat at weddings, right? we eat, and then we eat some more at weddings, and that's fine. There are going to be days where that whole eating window stuff goes out the window. A couple of Saturdays ago, we had dinner with friends at a restaurant where it was family sharing, and luckily our friends, one of them had a dairy allergy, and I'm lactose intolerant too, but they weren't going to be ordering desserts with the dairy allergy, and the other one had given up grains for Lent. So they're the perfect people to go out with for my husband and I, but they were bringing one dish at a time, and we were at that restaurant for 4 damn hours. So sometimes you end up eating before bed, sometimes you end up eating over a long period of time. You do need to enjoy life too, but when you have control over the circumstances, try to stick to the 90-minute eating windows. All right. If you are going to eat breakfast, say you're at a resort, say you're away with family, say you have a breakfast meeting, try to stay away from the carbohydrates. No natural sugars, including fruits and grains, no artificial sugars. Foods that you can have, eggs, meat. We love bacon. Of course, try to find the bacon without the nitrites in it. And also keep in mind that celery salt is where we get sodium nitrite from. So you see a lot of these all-natural bacon packages, and you look at the ingredients, and it's the celery salt. That's just one example of how crappy our labeling laws are here in North America. Now, I'm not so sure about any Aussies or the Kiwis or our friends in the UK on the line today, but in Canada and the US, our labeling laws stink in both countries. So they can label bacon as all natural and switch from sodium nitrite to celery salt on the label. So just be careful. When it comes to bacon, my husband and I go to the butcher. We buy a nice slab of pork belly. It's got no garbage in it. We control the kind of salt that goes into it. We control how we cure it. We ask the butcher. He slices it up beautifully for us into nice thick pieces. We'll either take it home and brine it ourselves. And so I'll mix in salt, and I like bay leaves and, pepper, and we'll let it sit in the fridge for a week, and then we just cook it a little bit in the oven, and then we refreeze it and we fry it up after that. And it's great. Or you can just make it fresh as well from the butcher shop too. But other things, salmon is great in the morning. Salmon is another good brunchy food that we usually have once a week. On the weekends, we'll do a big bacon, egg, coconut flour pancake feast on a brunch on one day, and usually the next day we'll have like eggs and salmon and asparagus and have that for more of a brunch on the weekend. So the other meats are all good. Vegetables, all the non-starchy vegetables that are going to be listed on the subsequent slides are all good. Avocados are good. Olives are great. Olives are fantastic if you're going to eat in the morning time. Nuts and nut butters and seeds are all very good. So if you are going to eat breakfast, try to stick to these foods. So exceptions, again, meetings where you can't avoid it, resorts when you're on vacation, cottage time with the family. Recently, my husband and I were trying to get from Toronto to El Paso, Texas. There is no quick way to get there, or no direct way either. And I struggle a lot with connecting flights. My husband and I were between Canada and the U.S. for a very long time before he was able to move to Canada. So I have airport anxiety about connecting flights. So I knew that travel day was going to be 12 hours and it was going to be very long and that I was going to be in the Dallas airport for an exceptionally long period of time. So that morning when I woke up, we had pretty much cleared out our fridge. So I had half an avocado, I had what was left of the olives that were there, and I had a couple of eggs. And I had that for breakfast in the morning. Now, avocados and olives are fruits, but nobody really thinks of them as fruits. Everybody thinks of them as little fat bombs. And a lot of people don't even think of olives as fat either. They don't think of them as fruit. They don't think of them as fat. Olives are like the one food out there that it has this missing identity. It was funny because in clinic, I started asking patients, I said, what do you think, what kind of food are olives? And they all sit there like blinded, you know, they're like, well, olive oil's fat. And we're like, yes, and that fat comes from olives. So olives are fat, but they're also a fruit. So olives and avocados are two fruits that you can really go wild with. Avocados in particular are sort of like the unicorn of the food, all of the natural occurring foods, because they are both very high in fat and fiber. Usually if a naturally occurring food is high in fiber, it doesn't have too much fat in it, and vice versa. Of course, there are some exceptions to that, like chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp hearts, for example. But avocados are that sort of one solid food exception to the rule. So when I hate avocados too, I'll be perfectly honest, but when I'm starving, I'll have one. And I do have half of one every night with dinner when I eat at home. And if I know I'm not eating at home that night, I will have half of one at lunch. And, you know, it's finding the right texture. If you're not an avocado person, I like mine like that, not ripe at all. I like mine hard, can break a window hard. I chop it up into cubes. I put lots of salsa on it. I put lime juice on it, salt and pepper. I'm like a child. I have to drown it in salsa to eat it. Like some kids, you have to drown their eggs in ketchup. I have to drown my avocados in salsa. Or if I am having a salad, I'll throw them in the salad because I find they get the flavor gets masked by the other vinegar in the salad and the other flavors of the salad. So that is that they're perfectly okay. And nuts and nut butters and seeds are also okay in the morning time.